Break Ranks is presented in association with Bands of America's Sun Safety partner, Outrun the Sun. This is the podcast helping to create, provide, and expand
winners in life.
Positively life-changing experiences through music for all.
Go for it!
This is the podcast that encourages everyone to
break ranks.
Week 1 of Bands of America's 50th season is in the books. We have the results from 4 early regionals to unpack, and then a little segment I'm calling Chatting with Chuck. Maybe that's what you should have called. We're chatting with BOA Hall of Famer Chuck Henson, former PA announcer, now BOA podcaster, and I think home repair guy?
The glue in between the glue and the grouting that goes into the tile work.
Chuck reminisces about his 37 years as Bands of America announcer, how he got started.
That was literally the genesis.
What happened that caused Chuck to step away from the announcer's booth.
That reaffirms for me, Dan, everything I ever thought about Bands of America.
And how it felt to be asked to host a brand new 50th anniversary BOA podcast called Joining Us.
When I was no longer going to be of use, that's when they said you'll always have a place.
The voice, Chuck Henson, is our guest this time on, well, you go ahead and say it again, Chuck.
Break ranks!
Bands of America's 50th anniversary season got off to a big start last weekend with 4 regionals from the shores of Lake Erie to the Rio Grande Valley. We began in the Glass City, Toledo, Ohio.
In first place, with a score of 84.1, the 2025 Bands of America Northwest Ohio Regional Champion, the Avon High School Marching Band from Avon, Indiana.
Naraja Chandrasekharan on the mic at the University of Toledo as last year's Grand Nationals champ. The Avon Marching Black and Gold claimed their first gold medals of the new season. Avon swept all 3 captions on their way to a finals win in Toledo, finishing 2.5 points ahead of second place William Mason High School of Ohio. Michigan's Jenison High School was third in finals. In prelims, Avon was the 4A champ. Goshen High School from Indiana was the gold medalist in 3A. Jenison took the 2A title, and Crestwood High School of Ohio was tops in 1A. Meanwhile, 1,600 miles away in the mountains of southeastern New Mexico, there were 5 bands from the land of enchantment who made it into finals at the Las Cruces Regional, and one of them came out on top.
In first place, with a score of 75.2, the 2025 Bands of America New Mexico Regional Champion, the Clovis High School Marching Band from Clovis, New Mexico.
Announcer Charla Victor with the good news for Clovis High School as the Wildcat Marching Band swept all captions in Las Cruces on their way to a finals win. They had 2 Texas bands hot on their heels, though. East Lake High School just over a point behind in second, and Eastwood High School in third. It's worth noting that a Class 2A band almost made the top 3 in Las Cruces. That band is Rampart High School of Colorado, which was our 2A class champion in prelims. Clovis was first in 3A. East Lake took home the medals for 4A. We follow the Rio Grande from just south of Las Cruces all the way downriver to McAllen, Texas for the results of our 3rd regional.
And in first place, with a score of 79.6, the 2025 Bands of America South Texas Regional Champion, the John B. Alexander High School Marching Band from Laredo, Texas.
That's Alex Quintero with the good news about a band that has seen rapid improvement over the last several years. The John B. Alexander Mighty Bulldog Band from Laredo, Texas, won the visual and general effects captions in finals, while second place Roma High School was tops in the music caption. In prelims, Alexander won 4A, Arlington South was tops in 3A, Roma had a caption sweep in 2A, and Gruya did the same to claim the 1A medals. Finally, to paraphrase the old cowboy song, the sun is riz, the sun is set, and we ain't out of Texas yet.
And in first place, with a score of 83.75, the 2025 Bands of America Austin Regional Champion from Austin, Texas, the Vandegrift High School Marching Band.
That's Diamond John Pollard with the winner at the BOA Austin Regional. The 2019 BOA Grand National Champions Vandegrift off to a strong start in 2025, sweeping the captions and finals of the BOA Austin Regional to finish 1.25 points ahead of second place Cedar Park. And the Timberwolves had the Vista Ridge Ranger Band pushing them. VR came in third, less than a half point behind Cedar Park. By the way, all three of those high schools, along with two other finalist bands, Leander and Rouse, all hail from the same school district, the Leander ISD. In prelims, Crum High School swept Class 1A, Belton High School got the 2A medal, Cedar Park won 3A, and Vandegrift took home the 4A medallions. Our special guest this time on Break Ranks is the voice himself, Bands of America Hall of Famer Chuck Henson. For 35 years, the primary public address announcer for BOA. He is, in many ways, one of the core personalities of the entire marching band activity nationwide. And I'm proud to call him my good friend, Mr. Chuck Henson. Hi, Chuck.
Hi, sir. How are you today?
I'm great. I am great. How are you doing?
My temperature's going down a little bit. We were having some technology issues yesterday and today with me and this computer, and it almost derailed us today, but I'm glad to be here.
You started hosting your own podcast for Bands of America this year. It's called Joining Us, and it's a celebration of BOA's 50th anniversary this year. I think of it as an oral history of our organization, told by some of its most iconic personalities.
100%.
People like Dr. Tim Lotzenheiser, Bob Buckner, Dean Westman, Sherry Manning, so many that you've already talked to, and you've got so many more to talk to. And that's our primary reason for chatting with Chuck. Ooh, chatting with Chuck. Maybe that's what you should have called it. That's our primary reason for chatting with Chuck. But it's not going to be a podcast about a podcast, I promise. This is going to be about you, Chuck Henson.
Yeah, that's a spiraling loop we don't want to become a part of, a podcast in a podcast.
You're right, exactly. The feedback loop.
You know, isn't it funny? The whole name, when we had the initial meeting, and we're like, well, what do we want to name it? And I go like, just as long as it's nothing cliche, and I don't want to hear marching band music in the background while it's happening and things like that. And I think it might have been Patrick Eller that said joining us, or Ben from Bands of America who may have said it. But I'm like, of course that's what it is. Of course that's what it is. It has to be that.
Yeah, it has to be. And it works, on so many different levels. I think it's great. And I have been a frequent listener. I started today to listen to the latest episode, which is
the best.
It's, well, I don't know about that. The Tim Lotzenheiser, Dean Westman ones were pretty darn good too.
Yeah.
The most recent one here is all about the announcing team, and we had so much fun recording that.
I don't think we've ever had an opportunity to do anything like that.
No.
As a group. I mean,
well, I've interviewed you a couple of times for like Jumbotron stuff or for the old Break Ranks podcast. We've done things like that, but never as like a panel discussion. And you had Rich Frazier on this podcast too. Both John Pollard and I texted each other going, who's Rich Frazier? Because we knew the original announcer for BOA was Dick Janik.
That's right.
I had never met or even heard of Rich Frazier. So it was so great to make his acquaintance and learn that there's been another very important part of the announcing team I had no idea was out there.
I met him in August at DCI in Indianapolis. And I want to say it was one of the BOA staffers, Stevens, who said, hey, Chuck, this is Rich. He was a BOA announcer. And I went, hi.
You were? Okay.
How have I been doing this for nearly 40 years and I don't know your name?
Did you know there was a gap between when Dick Janik stopped announcing and when you started?
No, because I remember I tag teamed with Dick Janik at the 87 Summer Nationals.
Okay.
And I just assumed, and then I did day one, he did day two of Grand Nationals, but I was never informed. And then I heard I literally researched his clips and heard him do an announcement at a show. And his stories were so great to hear, from that time, early 80s up to the mid 80s, where it was fantastic. Fantastic. What a nice guy.
Well, let's get to know you, nice guy, Chuck Henson. Where did you go to school? Where'd you grow up? And what was your first band instrument? What did you play?
I'm a clarinet player. My dad wanted me to be Benny Goodman. That was his goal in life. I liked playing the clarinet. It was a lot of fun. I think if everything is a bridge to the next thing, if we've talked about this before, if doors open for a reason and we have to be smart enough to walk through them, I was smart enough in 5th grade to pick up that clarinet because little did any of us know what the rest of our lives would be like the moment we unpacked that instrument the first time.
It's that butterfly effect, right?
Yeah. I mean, what would we be doing today if that hadn't happened? You know, I went to a school in Florence, Kentucky. It was Boone County High School was where I went. Florence is a bedroom community for Cincinnati, Ohio. It's the farthest south suburb before you would leave what is called the greater Cincinnati area. As a matter of fact, the Cincinnati International Airport, which a lot of people know, is in Kentucky. It's in Hebron, Kentucky, which is the town next to mine. So the airport patterns, the flight patterns every 6 months would change, and those bad boys would come in right over my house for the longest time. So we'd be out in the backyard doing whatever kids do, and we'd have to put everything on pause so the could go by and then let us resume again after that.
How much did being in the band back then mean to you?
You know, it's funny because my high school band director was actually the director that started me on the clarinet. Gary Adams is his name, and Gary still lives in Northern Kentucky. He had a stroke about 6 weeks or so ago, and I've been keeping an eye on his progress. He's doing fine, as fine as you can be after an episode like that. But he became such an integral part of that experience. He was my 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade band director, and then he left and went somewhere else, and I had someone else for 11 and 12. Dennis Akers was his name. But Mr. Adams, who I still refer to as Mr. Adams, of course, long after I was out of high school, would continue to send me notes and check in on me and see how I was doing. Probably, 30 years after high school.
Wow.
He went over to my mother's house and helped her sort out her iPad because she had gotten herself, kind of like I did today, bogged down in technology that she didn't understand. And he took the time to go to my mom's house, who was a band booster, of course, and help her do that. That's what band did for me.
Huh.
I mean, so if you're going to ask how significant it was to me, it was everything. The band room is where I went. That's where I lived. Life was the band room. There wasn't really anything outside of that.
What was your first awareness of Bands of America, or I guess marching bands of America at the time?
We, Boone County was not a very good marching band. I mean, we had a lot of good intentions. We just didn't have everything was evolving then. I went to high school from 76 through 80. And that was a really pivotal time for band programs. Post 1980, it just exploded after that.
I don't think that students today, performers today, understand the Berlin Wall that was between band and drum corps at that time, and the different styles. Not just the fact that bugles were in G and horribly out of tune most of the time, and so loud and all of that. And there's all these musical debates. Aside from all of that, there was a complete stylistic difference and disagreement over, what marching band was as opposed to what drum corps was.
Yeah.
But that was all about to change rapidly.
Yeah, we were a Cassavant school, a Cassavant style. So when I was drum major, I was doing the Cassavant style of conducting in 4, but the band was beginning to transition toward more of a drum corps style. So those things were not really compatible. And so our dysfunction, our disconnect programmatically was really, if I had looked at it with these eyes today, back then, I would have, oh my God, you poor kids, why are you even trying?
Yeah.
When I was a senior, I was drum major, one of 2 drum majors. Connie Sears was the other drum major. She still lives in my hometown. A little drum corps from Southgate, Kentucky, called the Golden Knights.
Yes.
Mighty Golden Knights.
So many great personalities in this activity have come out of the Golden Knights.
You got that straight. Like most of the Atchisons.
Yeah.
Norm Atchison
John
was our
Turner.
corps director. John Turner. I marched with John Turner in the Golden Knights.
Wow.
And we still reminisce about that. But Norm Atchison, Dan Atchison, Tom Atchison, all part of that little tiny, from St. Teresa's Catholic Church in Southgate, Kentucky, which is maybe 5 miles past the river coming out of Cincinnati. They came to my high school recruiting, and they did their spiel. And, I was drum major, so I'm talking to, it might have even been JT now that I think about it all these years later.
Wow.
And when they were done, I was like, well, that was great. It looks like you guys are going to have a good time. Have a great summer. And whoever that was I was talking to said, you should come check it out. I go, well, you just told us there are no woodwinds and I'm a clarinet player. So thanks, but no thanks. And he goes, oh, you could be in the color guard. No, I can't. That's for girls. You can, it was 1979, 1980. There were no men in color guard that I was aware of.
I mean, unless it was an all-male corps.
That's right. Madison Scouts and the Cavaliers.
And Racine Kilties
Amen.
at that point.
Amen. But all that, a lifetime away from young Chuck at age 17, in Boone County, Kentucky. So I went to that rehearsal, and of the 14 guard members, we had, do you know Debbie Black?
No, I don't.
She came from 27th Lancers. She was my first color guard instructor. 27th Lancers in the 70s were as regimented. There was this exercise we did that was called the 27 Places in Space. And it was, everything at a precise angle and where you had to be. And probably the best way I could have possibly learned how to do it, because she was a Lancer, she had a style to her that was very, and I want to say this in terms that isn't offensive to anyone, but it was very masculine. It was a very masculine style.
Yeah.
Because drum corps was coming out of a, military sort of thing as well. Of the 14 people in the color guard, 4 of us were guys. 4. And so I was like, okay, this is fine. I can do this. I didn't feel like it was anything. And it was hard, but it was also challenging. And now I'm surrounded by people that are different than the marching band. These are people that actually care all the time.
Everybody wants to be here.
All the time. You're like, we're hyped for rehearsal. Let's do it again. Push up, sure. Let me knock out 10. Let's do it again. We would do these little tiny weekends, because we didn't have a lot of money. We were on St. Teresa's school buses. We would do weekends like to Chicago for shows and stuff like that. And the next pivotal moment in my life happened at one of those weekend shows, because we were lining up for retreat. We always went first. Golden Knights always went first in the show. It was always daylight. It was always, that was our spot. And that weekend was a Midwest show. So it was Cavaliers and Phantom and Madison and Blue Stars and all these other tiny little, it was a big show, but we're lining up for retreat in the end zone. And the Madison Scouts, the 1980 version of the Madison Scouts are on the field. They're playing our song, Malaguena, Ice Castles. And I'm in the end zone. And my mouth must have just been open and hanging down as far as it could, because Debbie Black, my guard instructor, comes to me. She puts her hand on my shoulder and she says, okay, come back now. We've got to line up for retreat. But I must have just been pointing, going, but do you see that? That's amazing. So that season, the 1980 season, the Golden Knights ended up tying for the last spot in Class A finals or Class A prelims in Birmingham, Alabama. Who did we tie with? The Capital Airs from Madison, Wisconsin.
Madison. Okay.
It's all serendipitous, right?
And for those who don't know, the Capital Airs at that time were an all-girl corps out of Madison, Wisconsin. So there was a Madison Scouts, all male at that time, and the Capital Airs, all female.
It was that rush of being 35 people from tiny little Southgate, Kentucky, and making finals in our class at the World Championships. I might as well have been a drug addict at that point, because I couldn't get enough now. It was just, let's do this thing. How do we make this even better? I convinced Dan Atchison to drive me to Madison for auditions, after that season. So in the fall, after Thanksgiving, I guess is when they would do them.
Was he already in the Scouts at that point?
He had come out of the Scouts at that point. He had aged out by then. So,
oh yeah, that's right. 75. He was there when they won in 75.
But imagine he drives me up. I'm getting the whole history in the 8-hour car ride from Kentucky up to Wisconsin. I don't realize that I'm with who's going to be the future CEO of DCI.
Incredible.
I've kind of enveloped myself then in this weird royalty that was just beginning to happen at DCI. And I was awful at the audition, awful. I didn't know anything. I knew what I knew from Golden Knights, but that was really it. Mike Turner was doing auditions. And I think somehow we bonded on that we're both from Northern Kentucky thing. I got a call from Scott right after that, probably the week after that. And he said, well, we kind of all saw how you were. And, we think we see something in you. And if you'd be willing to move to Madison in January, we believe that we can get you to where you need to go to join the Corps. And I hung up the phone, literally walked into my folks and go, I'm moving to Wisconsin. I dropped out of college. I was like, it's time. The sirens are calling. I have to go. The sirens are calling. And they let me go. My folks were like, okay. And again, any other set of parents, they knew their kid. My folks knew their kid. They could see it in my eyes. They knew what it meant to be, and literally that was the beginning of my whole life. 1981, January in Madison, Wisconsin, in the depths of the freezing cold, where I met the people that to this day are still my best friends. And that experience coming through the ranks at Madison, I ended up as CO of the Guard. I taught the Corps for a couple years. I was on the board of directors for a couple years. Myself and Chris Comnick share a tattoo.
A fleur-de-lis, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a Celtic cross with a fleur-de-lis in the center. There are 2 of them. I have one, and the director of the Madison Scouts has the other.
In a moment, Chuck moves into the announcer's booth. First, another life-saving, skin-saving tip from Bands of America's sun safety partner, Outrun the Sun. I'm joined by Outrun the Sun's Dr. Christy Waterman, a board-certified dermatologist. Dr. Waterman, help us with just some baseline knowledge. We may think that we know things like what SPF is and our SPF number, but just make sure we're on solid footing here. Can you kind of tell us the difference between SPF 15 and, going on up to 50 or higher? What's the difference?
Sure. I'm glad you asked. So the main difference between SPF 15, 30, 50, and higher is the percentage of UVB rays that they block. So SPF 15 blocks about 93%, SPF 30 blocks about 97% of UVB rays, and SPF 50 blocks about 98%. So while higher SPFs provide some small amount of additional protection, the benefits decrease significantly after SPF 30. So in general, I recommend SPF 30 or higher for adequate protection, especially when applied correctly and reapplied frequently. So remember that even a tan is a sign of sun damage, and this is your body's response to DNA damage at the cellular level. So it's important to have adequate SPF coverage.
Those numbers seem so random, 15, 30, 50, 70. Why isn't it just 93% protection, 97%? That seems like that might be easier for folks to understand.
Sure, you're absolutely right. That was a measure that was created some decades ago against sun protection factor. Then there's other ways that we communicate. There's UPF, which is ultraviolet protection factor. So you're right, the nomenclature can be a little bit confusing. Just think of the number 30 for your SPF. And again, that's really a measure of UVB rays, where there's also UVA rays that also contribute to skin cancer. So broad spectrum coverage really provides protection against UVA and UVB rays.
Next week, Dr. Waterman tells us how much sunscreen is enough. Thanks to Outrun the Sun for being Bands of America's sun safety partner. Now back to our chat with Chuck. Hall of Famer Chuck Henson, longtime BOA announcer and now the host of the 50th anniversary podcast, joining us. Let's move into the announcing realm.
Okay.
That had to start, at BOA Summer Symposium or something? Or
1984. So Mike Turner, again, who was coordinating the color guard at the Summer Symposium. I didn't know anything about it. He comes to me, and it just so happened that camp fell between tours back in the day when DCI had a first tour and a second tour. And people would retool their shows in the kind of week or so in between and then hit the road with a new version. He came to me and my buddy Randy Black, who lives out in California now with his family, and said, "Hey, listen, I'm coordinating this camp. We need a couple last minute guard people. Are you interested in making a little money?" And that's how I heard about then MBA, Marching Bands of America. So I said, sure, let's do it. And I went to the camp and had a great experience. And then that started that connection. So then every year after that, I was teaching the summer camp. And it was, once I aged out in 84, I started back to school at the University of Kentucky. I started as a music major, of course. I realized that those were all 1 credit hour courses and there was no way I was ever going to graduate college. Then I switched from there to special ed. And while I was at the education library doing some work study, the phone rang. I picked it up and it was a gentleman calling for his wife, who was the librarian at the library. He was the program director for 2 radio stations in Lexington, Kentucky.
Yeah.
I answered the phone and he offered me a job, sight unseen. Overnights, weekends, yes, love to do it. Changed my major to journalism the next year, to radio communications. So
all it took was hearing your voice.
yeah, that was it.
Wow.
He didn't know me. I mean, it was, it's Kentucky small town radio. It was like,
Sure.
But you and I have discussed before the difficulties of that job. It was an oldies radio station. It was all live music playing off of 2 turntables. The songs are all 1.5 to 2 minutes long. By the time you get one queued up and ready to go, the next one's already running out and you got 3 deep in a stack to make sure that you're not going to have any dead air. And I have a great story I can tell you someday about cutting together my first legal ID on tape, where I had to literally splice the tape to put it all together. Oh my God.
Razor blades and grease pencils.
And Scotch tape.
And Scotch.
And
yes.
so I had started down that road in college and was still teaching the summer camp when, much like Rich Frazier's story from the Joining Us podcast, somehow it had gotten around to the BOA staff that I was in that course of study. And I think it was, I wish I could say for sure, because I think it was Kevin McCormick, Scott's brother, that came to me and said, hey, listen, Dick Janik is a little under the weather for Summer Nationals today. Can you just help him tag team? Just do every other one with him and, it'll be fine. And so I'm like, sure, no problem. And that was literally the genesis. From that point, I did day one of Grand Nationals. It was a 2-day show then. And every show since then.
Was there a script then?
Yes. For the Summer Nationals, no. It was just pages, random, crazy chaos. For Grand Nationals, there was a book. But as I previously mentioned, it wasn't really well maintained. Pages got out of order. It was not the finely tuned script machine that we operate off now. I don't think a lot of people understand that there's not a single word that comes out of either of our mouths at a show that isn't written down on a piece of paper, because we removed any possible errors from sounding as professional as possible by not letting anyone ad-lib any announcements. Because the minute you let an announcer, and this as well as I do, the minute you give an announcer a microphone and say, have at it, you have no idea what's coming out of their mouth. BOA used to do sports scores during the shows and stuff like that.
And, not every announcer is a professional broadcaster either. We kind of understand, I think, the parameters because of our jobs. But yeah.
Hey, all you Ohio State fans, you hear boo. That's not why we're here. That's not what we want to do. Let's focus on the kids. That's where we should be focused. As I said previously, turn around, look forward. What are you looking at?
Yep. That's where the show is.
Yeah. And I'm lucky. Dan, I'm the luckiest man alive. I've always been the luckiest man alive. The fact that we're even having this conversation 36, 37 years after that moment is a miracle to me.
Yeah.
If blessed is the word that people use, I am blessed, because this has been an amazing ride.
I hope there's room on that blessed platform, because you got company. I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Let's transition to this podcast joining us, and the privilege that you have here in 25 podcasts focused on, I called you a core personality of this activity. You certainly are, Hall of Famer and all of that, but the luminaries that you're getting to dive deep with in this and go back to the very beginnings and trace the history. It's got to be emotional for you. I mean, you've been involved in those 50 years, 35 of them. It's got to be emotional.
To talk to someone like Greg Bim or Gary Green or Richard Crane or, all of these guys that are literally iconic. Every single one of them is no pressure there, Chuck. None at all. Have at it. When Ben called me from Bands of America and said, hey, we're looking to do this. We would love for you to host it. We think that you'd be a good fit for that. I'm looking at the spot in my home right now where I stood and started to cry because I thought, first of all, I really, how would I possibly do something like that? How do you take an organization like this and boil it down to anything? But you said it. It's conversation driven. It's personality driven. It's all of these people, the unifying thing. First of all, we're all just people, and we're all suffering from imposter syndrome. All of us.
Yeah. If we're honest, we are. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people are like, oh, you're so great. No, not really. But we're all that. Greg Bim is that. Every single person has expressed that to me. But somehow through the cosmic universe that is all of this great energy that all of us kind of put out into the world, we found each other. And all of that stems from Larry McCormick. Every bit of it goes right back to him and about a store he started in Illinois to sell band instruments and podiums and flags and things to market those to marching bands. But he was also driven by a passion. And that word that we use a lot, Dan, excellence, is the whole thing. And I know it becomes cliche, but it's real. Every single one of us, every person who touches this, from volunteers at band check-in to the CEO of the organization, and everybody in the building feels it. We know that what we're attached to is something really cool and really special, and we get to be a part of it. The energy attached to it, it fuels lives. You know that, and we've had that discussion before.
So is excellence the binding thread, the commonality that you have found in all of these interviews, or is there something else that has popped out to you?
That's a great question. It's that, of course, because if you think of that as the core of the engine, what lights us up, right? The karma that we put out into the world. But it's also a quest for knowledge. Most of these educators that I've spoken to say, I simply just wanted to know more. I wanted to learn more. And in doing so, at the early stages, when Larry was putting together these weekends with the experts and he was putting together a magazine and he was disseminating information out into the world and people were eating it up like it was the most delicious thing ever on the menu. And he single-handedly changed everything when it came to marching band. Because as you and I have discussed, there was that Berlin Wall between band and drum corps, and he was bound and determined to knock it down.
There weren't many, if any, band competitions. High school marching bands just didn't compete with each other. Maybe a parade. But
You know what blew me away? It blew me away that there was even a summer circuit. Like the bands in the Midwest, they kind of had their act together. That Midwest Combine that they called it. When I got attached to Bands of America and I heard about the summer show, I go, what kid's going to give up their summer to do? And I think, well, Chuck, you've just given up 4 summers to do drum corps. Of course there's kids that want to do this because they want to be that. You become like the people you associate with, plain and simple. And this organization struck the right note at the right time and collected the right people in its tendrils of excellence and just pulled them all in to a place that is so focused on moving forward and education and the kids. I mean, it's just everyone sees that. There's not a single ego in the room ever. And if there ever is one, then they're not around for long because, narcissists need to make things about them and none of us are that. None of us are that.
Well, there's a Dr. Tim says to be the best, surround yourself with the best. And that is just how I feel every time I'm around anybody in BOA.
It's a service organization, plain and simple.
Yeah.
And we are here to serve. I was thinking, back in the early days when I was on staff, we would talk about all roads lead up the mountain and the mountain is the event, right? So everything you do has to head up that direction. It can't be any down. There can't be anything to the side. Everything builds to where we're headed, which is, excellence. Plain and simple.
We're talking to Chuck Henson, BOA Hall of Famer for 35 years, the primary voice of Bands of America, and now the host of the Joining Us podcast. Okay, I'm going to ask you to pick the favorite among your children.
Ooh.
Do you have one episode that really has surprised you or in some way stood out?
Well, other than ours, which quite frankly, from a personal perspective, because you and me and John and all the other folks, and I've heard from most everybody since that episode dropped, we've never had a chance to learn about each other, ever. I think the thing that I hear most in that episode is, I didn't know that, really, and we all surprised each other a lot along the way, but all of it makes everybody smile because, again, we can empathize and recognize ourselves in each other. But I think that Mike Davis is the episode that I went into going, I didn't know who he was. And when you've been around a long time, you know a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know who he was. And when we started that conversation, and he is a gentleman in his 80s, he basically is Disney music. He's worked in Tokyo and in Paris, and he started Future Core. He was also the director of bands at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater when Larry McCormick walked in and said, I'd like to use your stadium for a show.
Okay.
He's the one who connected. He and Bob Buckner are besties now. I mean, it's the glue in between the glue and the grouting that goes into the tile work. It's just, his was so interesting to me. And he's just down the road. I live in Central Florida, north of Tampa and Orlando, and he's over in Orlando is where he lives. And I was like, dude, I would love to do some work for you.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, sure. That sounds great. Let's do it. I'm like, is it really just that easy?
So he's still involved.
Yeah.
Still working.
With Disney. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Well, when you find people that are great at that, first of all, none of us really, my dad, I'll back up a little bit. My dad was high school educated, worked in a factory, R.A. Jones Incorporated along I-75 in Erlanger, Kentucky. He stood in one place and did one thing for 28 years, a machinist, right? He pulled a lever for 28 years. He hated it more than anything. When he retired, they gave him the ball peen hammer he used to use, and it was like just 3 inches long because he had worn it down so much and never got a new one. He said to me, and if he said it once, he said it 1,000,000 times, and it would be tattooed on the side of my face. I don't care what you become when you grow up, just make sure you love it because you have to spend more time at work than we spend with our families. And if you hate your job, which he hated his job, what a miserable existence that would be. But he had to do what he had to do. He had children to support, and that's how he made the level of money he needed to do to make that happen. But he was never happy there. And so for me, what I gathered from my parents as I was growing up was to do just that, to love what I do. And there's not been a day, I'm sure you can say the same thing. It's not been a day that I ever woke up and went, I don't want to go to work today. Never. No matter how early it was, didn't matter if it was Christmas morning. I still loved every second of it, and I can keep doing it now in spite of the difficulties that I've gone through over the last year and a half or so, which only limit me in certain regards. When Ben called and asked me to do the podcast, and I mentioned that, I cried, they didn't give me any notes on how to do this. None.
If you want to know the whole story, do listen to the latest episode of Joining Us, episode 11, right?
Yeah.
With us, with the announcers, because I asked Chuck about the problems with his vision and why he isn't announcing Grand Nationals as of last year. So we do have that whole discussion, and it's related to your vision. Go listen to that. But I'm sorry, I wanted people to know exactly what you're talking about here, because this is rough for me, and I know it's rough for you.
Yeah, it's, throughout the entire process, I've just said to myself, I just need to get to wherever the new normal is. Let me get to that spot. And I'm there now. So, there may be some improvement still, but really what I see of the world is what I'll see of the world from this point forward. We had talked about driving and stuff like that. And again, that's all part of that other episode. But the fact that James Stevens said to me, Chuck, as long as you want to, you've got a place here. And that meant everything to me. That reaffirms for me, Dan, everything I ever thought about Bands of America. Anything I projected onto them about any kind of goodness or altruistic expressions or what the real motivation was behind this, that's what proved it to me. When I was no longer going to be of use, that's when they said you'll always have a place. I know. I know. It's that's why I sat over there and cried, because it was just like, I thought I was done, put out to pasture. But yet we found something that I don't have to read script to do this. I know so much about these people and they're just conversations. So that's what we do. We have an organic conversation. I don't even prep for them. Not at all. Because we're just going to talk. And people who love what they do will talk.
Maybe philosophically, the words after joining us should be staying with us. Because
you can't get rid of me.
Well,
I'm like a bad fungus.
It's just the culture of Bands of America and Music for All, right?
Yeah.
Just like you just said, when you're part of the family, you're never not part of the family anymore. So
100%.
This has been so great catching up with you. I hope everybody will go listen to every single episode of Joining Us and really get an understanding of the people who've made this all possible and the people behind that philosophy.
Yeah. You want to know how the blanket was woven? Well, this is how it was woven together with these people's dreams. And they're still, every single one of them, still a very active part of what's happening from wherever they are.
Hey, man. Love you, brother.
You're the best. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate this.
This was fun. Bands of America Hall of Fame announcer and podcaster Chuck Henson. Next week, we'll explore the unique relationship between Bands of America and the Pasadena Rose Parade. Until then, Break Ranks is presented in association with Outrun the Sun, Music for All's Sun Safety Partner. I'm Dan Potter. Go for it. Break Ranks.